Folks, before we dive into today's episode, we want to let you know that the Prancing Pony podcast has joined Spreaker Prime. Now, you're going to hear something different starting with this episode.
And what will you hear? Well, to put it simply, digitally inserted ads. But hang on, keep listening.
That's right. Now, we need you to know why we're doing this. The use of digitally inserted ads, including throughout our entire back catalog of episodes, is going to give us the ability to start hiring a team of people around us.
That's right. During our hiatus, which starts next month after episode 178, we're planning to bring on board several part-time team members, a webmaster, an episode editor, and more.
And by building a team of dedicated professionals around us, Sean and I are going to be able to focus exclusively on those things that only we can do. Write and record our show, engage directly with our listeners, and then continue to make the show better season after season.
As the show keeps growing, and with the hope that we have to do something extra with the Amazon show coming out next year.
Oh, yeah.
We find that we really have to turn this from a two-man operation into a full-fledged team project. And that's okay, because we're really looking forward to it.
Oh, man, we sure are. Now, listen, I know everybody's worrying about a whole bunch of ads, but that's not the way it's going to be. Each typical show is going to see the following. We're going to have a single 30-second pre-roll, really easy to hit that skip button. And then we're going to have a pair of ads in the middle, called a mid-roll. Those are going to be back-to-back for the most part, at least going forward they will be. And then at the end, we'll have a couple of short ads. That's called a post-roll. And that's after the music, so you're not going to listen to those, and that's okay. So if you're just talking about those mid-roll spots, we're talking 3, maybe 4 minutes of commercials in a 100-minute episode. And frankly, we think that's a bargain.
And we'll never have more than 2 ads in the middle of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, there will be no mid-roll ads at all on our special episodes.
That's right.
That's our interviews, our Tolkien reading day, and others like that.
That's right.
Now, of course, if you prefer the subscription model with ad-free content, please be sure to visit patreon.com/prancingponypod, where you can subscribe and get a custom RSS feed with no digital ads.
Now, this reward is going to be available at the $10 tier and up, and eventually we'll be uploading all of our back catalog episodes to that feed. But for now, it's going to start with Season 5 episodes coming after our hiatus. Now, please, we want you to know we did not make this move lightly. Our objective is not to build a horde to attract dragons, just to build a team of people who can help us do what we've worked so hard to do every year so far, make the Prancing Pony podcast better and better every season.
And now, back to the show.
Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 174 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where we aren't eager to hurry southwards.
No, we do love a good procrastination, don't we?
That we do.
But folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room and we'll be there sometime. I don't know.
Eventually, right? Yeah. We might procrastinate our appearance. It's true.
Exactly. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I am here with the Man of the West, who is husbanding his strength against weariness to come, Alan Sisto.
Well, the Dark Lord hasn't been idle since our last episode, Sean.
You keep on saying that, and I told you, just as long as you don't make me wake up early each day and journey on far into the evening, that's fine, whatever.
Okay. I do make you record late into the evening, though.
That is true, and that is partly why I am not a morning person, and I don't like to wake up early each day. So there you go.
Fair enough.
But enough about all that. Why don't we go ahead and let time-traveling Alan introduce the next segment.
And today we're bringing you another new installment of The North Wing.
Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn, made special for hobbits. Well, this is our place made special for some of our listeners to give us a chance to get to know them.
That's right. Now, rooms at the North Wing are admittedly a little hard to come by, so only our patrons at the Bombadil's Bequest and Círdan's Contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod.
Please do. We've got our waiting list for the North Wing right now, but we'll get to all of them soon, and we'll make room for more if necessary.
That we will. Well, folks, why don't we go ahead and welcome tonight's guest to the North Wing, Seth Wilson.
My Govanen, everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, Seth. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us, Seth. It's great to have you on. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here tonight. Seth, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? What do you do? And what do your loved ones think of all this Tolkien stuff that you're so into? Do they think you're a total nerd? Do they like it too? That sort of thing.
Well, I'm currently living in Austin, Texas, not far from Lord of the Mark country.
Woo!
A software engineer. I grew up in Hawaii. I've kind of lived all over the world. My family does think I'm a total nerd, but they also encouraged this, got me started down this Tolkien road, so they have no one to blame but themselves.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's nice when you can just throw it back in their faces, like, take a look at me. You made me like this. You made me like this, Mom.
You started it.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Well, now, Seth, the question that we ask everybody who comes to the Prancing Pony, this is not going to come as a surprise to you. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like, and why do you keep coming back?
So my dad read The Hobbit to me when I was 5 or 6, followed shortly after by Lord of the Rings. And I remember we were living in Israel at the time. He was teaching at Tel Aviv University. So I remember we had kind of our route that we would walk different places, and some of those landmarks on the route became Mirkwood and the Falls of Rauris, which was just a sort of outdoor fountain, but it was the Falls of Rauris. It was great.
That's cool.
So I think the sense of place really helped with getting me into Lord of the Rings and keeping me there. On Fairy Stories, this whole idea of escape was very helpful to me as a kid and has continued to be throughout my whole life. Also, with my father being a linguist, Tolkien's language stuff slowly grew on me as I became old enough to appreciate it. So that now keeps me coming back in a whole different way.
That's great. I really love the idea that, you and your dad kind of brought Middle-earth to life as you're just kind of like walking around as a kid. That seems like I don't know, it just seems like such a magical thing to do with your kid, and it must have been a lot of fun for you.
It was. I don't know if either of you guys have seen Stranger Things, but the kids in that show had, there was a street they called Mirkwood in the first episode of the show. And
that's right.
I fell in love with that when I saw it. I was like, yes, this is exactly what my childhood was like.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Well,
I'll go ahead and move on. What's your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And if then you could also tell us your favorite non-Legendarium work by Tolkien, if you have one.
So my favorite book in the Legendarium, I mean, I know Lord of the Rings is considered, one volume and was just sort of split up for publication reasons, but
right.
I do favor the Fellowship of the Ring. I think I'm sort of like Gollum, and I'm interested in the roots and beginnings of things.
Yes.
I think I really enjoy especially book 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring, and that whole gradual transition from the Hobbit tone into full-on epic Tolkien Middle-earth world building by the end of book 1, and certainly Council of Elrond in book 2.
Right.
So I think keeps me coming back again and again, particularly to Fellowship.
Yeah.
In terms of non-Legendarium stuff, my favorite non-Legendarium work has to be Leaf by Niggle, I think. I mean, there's a couple of runners-up, but I think everyone says that, or most people say that, and it is a beautiful allegory from the man who hates allegories. So,
yes, it is.
Well said.
That is quite true. Well, you know what, Sean? I think we need to reword that question. We need to rewrite it. Which is your favorite volume in the Legendarium? Because really, it's not fair. Otherwise, there's really only 3 to choose from, and I think most people do have a favorite volume in The Lord of the Rings. So maybe we'll
that's a good point. We probably should rephrase the question next time.
Yeah. I mean, we know what we mean.
Yeah.
And most of our guests know what we mean, but just for the sake of clarity, I think we'll have to say which is your favorite volume. So
I think that's totally fair.
All right. Well, Seth, what's your favorite memory? It sounds like you've got one of a Tolkien-related activity. Is there something maybe else that you've done that you want to tell us about? Maybe a moot you've attended. We know you're at TextMoot, for instance. A Tolkien-related vacation, some sort of special reading, anything that comes back to you as one of your favorite memories.
So TextMoot was totally amazing. Had a great time. Probably my best memory, Tolkien-related. I did a master's degree at Oxford in medieval history. So
Wow.
That whole year and a half, 2 years is kind of an extended best memory in a way.
Yes, it would be.
I was at Trinity College right across from Exeter, where Tolkien was. So,
oh my goodness!
I could pop into the Eagle and Child and the Rabbit Room where they hung out.
It'd be hard not to just about every day. That's pretty amazing.
Right.
Wow,
what an experience that
I've got to get over there. And so I'm like the only one of us 3 who's never been to Oxford now, and I know I've got to get over there. Everybody keeps telling me that.
I don't know if travel will be back in time for us to go to Oxford this year, but I sure hope so.
Yeah,
I sure hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to go back too. I haven't been since when I left in 2008, and I kind of have a longing to go back and walk the streets.
I've had a longing too ever since I got on the plane to come home 2 years ago.
Right.
I want to go
it's
back.
like that.
It is
It's just
fantastic.
like-
It really is.
I bet. Well, as you said, Seth, there is TextMoot, and it was a lot of fun this past year hanging out with you. Such a great event. Honestly, it was. I've been to a few of them now, and I was amazed at just how great it was for a small event. Just one of the regional moots from Signum.
Yeah.
So much
Yeah.
fun. There's an intimacy there that you just can't capture with the bigger events. The bigger
true.
events are great, but it was, I don't know, there was just something really special about it.
I know I enjoyed last year's, but yeah.
I used to live in Southern California, not far from Alan's stomping grounds, and so I've met and hung out with like quote unquote like big celebrities, and yet I didn't feel as starstruck as I felt sitting in what was that pub, the Richmond Arms there in Houston, with Corey Olsen and Sean from Prancing Pony. I'm like, what's happening?
Stop.
This is amazing. No, seriously.
That is amazing to us because, of course, when we first started, I remember feeling the same way when we went to Mythmoot, and there we are talking with Corey Olsen and John Garth and Doug Anderson, and we were so out of our depth.
Yeah,
we don't want to mention that out loud, but we just did, and it was phenomenal. But yeah, to be mentioned in the same breath as those guys.
Thank you. That's really pretty amazing, and I love hearing that. And truly, I really enjoyed hanging out with you. And since we're both in Austin, I hope we can get together again soon. So
hope so too.
I'm just glad we could have you on the show. I mean, I don't get to hang out with you this year.
No, that's true. You don't. You're way out in California.
Maybe Mythmoot if travel comes back. You never know.
There you go.
Never know.
We'll see.
Okay, well, now for a lightning round of quick questions and answers. So we're going to make the questions quick, and we got to keep the answers quick, Seth. All right?
Got it.
All right.
Who's your favorite character in Lord of the Rings?
Sam Gamgee.
Not
It's
a
hard
bad
to
call.
argue with. Okay.
Yeah. What's the one place in Middle-earth that you wish you could visit?
The Prancing Pony.
Oh, there's a great
There you go.
answer. I like that one.
Well, I was going to ask you your favorite Hobbit, but I think you just answered that one, so I'm going to call an audible on this one. Who's your favorite elf from the First Age?
Finrod Felagund.
Can't argue with that one either.
Unarguable choice. Yeah, absolutely. Favorite Tolkien artist or work of art?
Oh, I really Ted Naismith stuff recently. I've kind of fallen in love with.
Hard not to. Yeah.
Yeah, really amazing stuff. All right, well, our fifth and final lightning round question. One does not simply walk into Mordor, but if you could, who would you rather have at your side? Bob or Nob? No, I'm kidding. How about Glorfindel or Ecthelion?
I'm going with Nob. If I can't have Sam, I'm taking Nob.
Glorfindel and Ecthelion could just hang out. No, we'll just take Nob.
That works. I like it.
All right. Those are some great answers, Seth. Really appreciate it. And man, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This is a really good time for me.
Good. We're glad.
Awesome. Great to have you on.
Thanks for joining us, but I think it's time for all of us to head back over to the common room to join the rest of the listeners.
And Seth, hopefully we'll see you back at our next Questions After Nightfall, if not sooner.
I look forward to it.
Definitely.
Awesome.
And now, folks, we return you to the podcast in progress.
Well, thank you very much, Alan.
You're very welcome. Now let's go ahead and get back to the book because we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
Yes, we do. Folks, we bring you other Tolkien stuff from time to time, but at heart, Alan and I are fans of Tolkien's books and books about Tolkien. That's our passion.
Yes, it is. And as you know, we read a lot of books in preparation for this show every week. Now, if you want to get your hands on a book that we've mentioned, you're going to want to check out the official library page of our website, theprancingponypodcast.com. There we have links to every book we've mentioned on the show. I feel like I should include an exception for Parma El Delambre on number 17.
Only because it's out of print, but you know what?
I know.
In the next few weeks, I'll make sure we get a link to the website up there. You can order the ones that are in print, and who knows, maybe the others will be back in print someday if there's a lot of demand for them. Hint, hint.
Yeah. Hey, you know what to do, people.
Yep.
Get those pens out. Send those letters in. All right.
Yep. I think you might have an email up. You could probably reach him there.
Probably.
But anyway, there is a whole lot of other great stuff on our website, too, even before we get that link up to Parma El Delambre. We've got show notes and book links specific to each episode. We've got some outtakes up there. We've got Prancing Pony Ponderings when we have the time to write them. And we've got some other little extras up there, too.
Yes, we do.
You'll also find a link to our online storefront at teespring.com/stores/PPP, where you can find shirts, mugs, stickers, and other really cool PPP gear. So please check that out.
Definitely. And now let's let the river bear us on at its own pace. Probably about 6 pages an episode, if I remember correctly.
Kind of rushing it this time, aren't we?
Well, Corey would say we're rushing it even if we just did 4 pages. But
that is true. That is
we
true.
have to at least have some sort of target end date that's within our lifespan. He may be a Númenórean, though. That may be the trick.
I think that's probably it. Or an elf. He might be an elf.
Corey, we love you, man. All right.
We do love you, Corey. Hopefully he's laughing with us.
All right. We're going to go ahead and start, where else? At the very beginning. And I'm going to go ahead and read these first few paragraphs.
All right.
Frodo was roused by Sam. He found that he was lying well wrapped under tall gray-skinned trees in a quiet corner of the woodlands on the west bank of the great river Anduin. He had slept the night away, and the gray of morning was dim among the bare branches. Gimli was busy with a small fire near at hand. They started again before the day was broad. Not that most of the company were eager to hurry southwards. They were content that the decision, which they must make at latest when they came to Rauros and the Tyndrock Isle, still lay some days ahead, and they let the river bear them on at its own pace, having no desire to hasten towards the perils that lay beyond, whichever course they took in the end. Aragorn let them drift with the stream as they wished, husbanding their strength against weariness to come. But he insisted that at least they should start early each day and journey on far into the evening, for he felt in his heart that time was pressing, and he feared that the Dark Lord had not been idle while they lingered in Lórien. Nonetheless, they saw no sign of any enemy that day nor the next. The dull gray hours passed without event. As the third day of their voyage wore on, the lands changed slowly. The trees thinned and then failed altogether. On the eastern bank to their left, they saw long, formless slopes stretching up and away towards the sky. Brown and withered they looked, as if fire had passed over them, leaving no living blade of green, an unfriendly waste, without even a broken tree or a bold stone to relieve the emptiness. They had come to the brown lands that lay vast and desolate between southern Mirkwood and the hills of the Emyn Muil. What pestilence or war or evil deed of the enemy had so blasted all that region, even Aragorn could not tell. Upon the west to their right, the land was treeless also, but it was flat, and in many places green with wide plains of grass. On this side of the river they passed forests of great reeds, so tall that they shut out all view to the west, as the little boats went rustling by along their fluttering borders. Their dark withered plumes bent and tossed in the light cold airs, hissing softly and sadly. Here and there, through openings, Frodo could catch sudden glimpses of rolling meads, and far beyond them, hills in the sunset, and away on the edge of sight, a dark line, where marched the southernmost ranks of the Misty Mountains. So it's a relatively uneventful first few paragraphs, but we are seeing the transition of the landscape.
Yeah.
We're starting to see the passage of time as they're going down the river. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a bit there. Why don't we go back to the beginning and talk about...
Of course.
You know, once again, we get this device we saw at the end of the previous chapter, Frodo falling asleep in the boat, and here we see him woken by Sam. It's a nice little transition, even if it's not necessarily him being woken that time he fell asleep. We don't know if time may have actually passed. But so, yeah, Sam wakes him, and they're in this quiet little corner of the woodlands. We see that Gimli working with a little fire. Small fire, not a big fire.
Yeah, dwarves are good with fire, but that certainly is
true.
Probably his little contribution to the group.
Yeah.
And, of course, they started early, but they're not in a hurry. You know, the idea was, okay, let's go ahead and we'll get moving. We're not going to sit around until, the middle of the day. But we're not going to rush. And there's a reason for that. We rather like the fact that we don't have to make this decision for a few more days.
You know, we saw that in the last chapter, didn't we? They didn't really know what they wanted to do. They're getting close to having to make the decision between going to Minas Tirith or going on to Mordor. And each member is going to have to make that decision for himself. We already know that Boromir is going to go to Minas Tirith no matter what.
Right.
Aragorn was planning to go to Minas Tirith no matter what, but now that he's leading the Fellowship, he's not sure.
Yeah. Big change for him.
Frodo got kind of a difficult decision in front of him, whether he wants to, go to Minas Tirith first and see what happens there, or if he wants to do his own thing.
Go straight to Mordor, right.
Right. But I like this idea that they, you kind of wonder, is it just they've just gotten comfortable? Like, this is our group, and we just don't really want to change anything right now. We don't want to rock the boat.
Terrible
metaphor to use. But
yeah, that is a terrible metaphor to use, but I'll allow it. It's definitely a little bit of that. I think the company they've been through so much, and the
yeah,
idea that they're going to end up going some separate ways, to harken back to the Doors of Durin there and the journey titles, that if they are going to go their separate ways, it's going to be a little bit of a sad time. And
yeah,
who's going to go? Is it going to be Boromir by himself and everybody else going to Mordor? Is
yeah.
Frodo going to decide to get? It's just a moment of dread.
Nobody wants it to get to that point. They
Right.
all know that that point is coming, but it's just like,
Yeah.
put it off as long as you can. We've all been there.
Mhm.
We've all experienced, you've got a decision coming. You just don't want to have to make it yet.
Even if we don't push it back, at least not let's rush into it, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of what's going
yeah,
on
exactly.
here. I mean, they are getting up early in the morning and they're going late into the day.
And that I think is interesting that Aragorn is kind of taking this approach in leading the group. Okay, well, we're going to start early and we're going to sail until late each evening, but we're not going to row. We're not going to, make too much speed. We're just going to drift with the stream.
Right.
It's
right.
kind of like a hurry, not hurry approach.
Yeah, it really is. And the purpose, though, there's a reason behind this, right? He is trying to hurry a little bit because the Dark Lord hasn't been idle, but he doesn't.
Right.
He doesn't want to make them row, let's say, for 8 hours a day. He'd rather have them drift for 12, because he wants to husband their strength. He wants to save and protect their strength against what he knows is going to be coming. The rest of this journey is not going to get any easier.
That's true. They're getting very close to the point where there's probably going to be some fighting to be done.
Yeah.
And he knows that.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to see some of that later in this chapter, even if it is just Legolas.
Right. But there's no sign yet. No sign of the enemy on day 1 or day 2.
That's right.
But then...
Yeah, even on day 3, there's still no sign of the enemies, but we get the lands beginning to change, right? We get the thin and failing trees, and then we get the brown lands.
It's starting to look ominous and menacing, even if there's
is.
not any enemies there. Yeah,
It is. It's like the landscape is now fulfilling the role of an enemy at some point, or at least it's starting to have that sense. It certainly isn't opposing them yet, but it will.
Right.
So they get to these brown withered slopes, the brown lands. And you've got a little word nerdery there for us, I believe.
I do, yeah. According to Tolkien's Unfinished Index, brown lands is a simple translation of the Sindarin Barennin, which comes from the Sindarin word baran, meaning brown or yellow-brown.
Oh, which we would recognize perhaps from Baranduin.
Like Baranduin.
From the Brandywine, right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we will hear more about the brown lands next season when Treebeard tells us about the Entwives. There he tells us it's where the Entwives made new gardens. They weren't the brown lands at the time. Treebeard says, all the gardens of the Entwives are wasted. Men call them the brown lands now. And in describing their search for the Entwives, he says, we crossed over Anduin and came to their land, but we found a desert. It was all burned and uprooted, for war had passed over it. But the Entwives were not there. And I'm sorry, I can't help but do Treebeard whenever a Treebeard line is there.
I'm just looking forward to next season when we have whole episodes of that stuff.
Of me going very slowly.
Of you and me. Hopefully I get a few Treebeard lines.
You will. I'll make sure you do.
But yeah, of us just going really slow with the Treebeard dialogue.
Folks, we'll be covering 1.5 pages.
You'll see us slow
tonight.
our pace then.
That's right. Oh man, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what a sad truth about the Brownlands. This is where the gardens were, and by the time the Ents made it there, they were gone. It was a desert, destroyed by something that Sauron used to lay waste. We don't even know.
And we might have a little bit more to say about the Entwives and the Brownlands a little bit later in the episode, so stay tuned.
I think we will, yeah.
But what else do we have? So even the land to the west, it's also treeless, but it's flat with green grass and reeds. Mm-hmm. They can just see the southern end of the Misty Mountains, just visible on the edge of sight.
Right. And then even though we don't read this, we discover next that there are no living things except birds, but there's a lot of those, including big black swans.
Yeah, black swans. Now, we're never officially told that these are spies of the enemy, but
no,
it does kind of seem like they probably are, don't they? I mean,
yeah.
For one thing, there's their color, and Tolkien does often suggest, evil motives with the word black.
That is true.
And there's just kind of the way Aragorn says it, oh, there's swans.
Yes.
And Aragorn's like, yes, and they are black swans.
Black swans.
As if that's significant. So
I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Tolkien suggests this a bit himself in our favorite letter, number 131, when he tells Milton Waldman that all through the book, hints of the watchfulness of spies have multiplied. That really does sort of suggest or strongly hint that these black swans are spies of the enemy.
Yeah. Amazing that even swans work for Sauron,
Yeah, well, they are mean and nasty. I mean, you'd expect geese to work for him, for sure.
Totally, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But swans aren't exactly friendly birds.
I guess not. I don't know. I haven't encountered swans too much. Geese I know are awful.
Geese are just terrible.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man.
Geese are noisy, disgusting creatures.
Who will kill you just as soon as look at you.
Yeah.
Swans,
I haven't experienced swans that much.
I don't know. I haven't experienced many swans myself.
I don't know.
But black swans, they sound beautiful.
Yeah.
But probably a little intimidating.
Yeah. Especially if you think they might be spies of Sauron. That would be quite intimidating.
And you can't exactly hide when you're on the river.
Right.
Not from
That's true.
a whole phalanx of swans flying above.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and have you pick up right there. Would you do that for us?
Yeah.
All right.
How wide and empty and mournful all this country looks, said Frodo. I always imagined that as one journeyed south it got warmer and merrier, until winter was left behind forever. But we have not journeyed far south yet, answered Aragorn. It is still winter, and we are far from the sea. Here the world is cold until the sudden spring, and we may yet have snow again. Far away down in the bay of Belfalas, to which Anduin runs, it is warm and merry, maybe, or would be but for the enemy. But here we are not above 60 leagues, I guess, south of the South Farthing away in your shire, hundreds of long miles yonder. You are looking now southwest across the north plains of the Riddermark, Rohan, the land of the horse lords. Ere long we shall come to the mouth of the Limlight that runs down from Fangorn to join the great river. That is the north boundary of Rohan, and of old all that lay between Limlight and the White Mountains belonged to the Rohirrim. It is a rich and pleasant land, and its grass has no rival, but in these evil days folk do not dwell by the river or ride often to its shores. Anduin is wide, yet the Orcs can shoot their arrows far across the stream, and of late, it is said, they have dared to cross the water and raid the herds and studs of Rohan. At least they're not saying they're paying a tribute of horses to Sauron anymore.
Well, right. Yeah, they're not saying that. We'll get that cleared up when they meet up with Hammer.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, I keep seeing the Limlight, and I just keep thinking...
Living near the Limlight?
Rowing on the Limlight.
Yeah. Living near the Limlight, the universal dream.
For those who wish to be in Rohan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So first we get Frodo's observation, thinking that it would be warmer, that we would, actually get into these lands where winter is left behind forever. And I'm sorry, you're not headed to Southern California. You're just not. But yeah, it's not.
It's another one of those hobbity things, isn't it? I mean, he knows he's going south, and he thinks, oh, it's he's heard it's warmer in the south. So he's like, why isn't it getting warm yet? And Aragorn's like, well,
it's January or February, I should say, at this point,
and we haven't gone that far south yet.
No, only 180 miles south of where the South Farthing ends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the journey so far, as Aragorn says, has been eastward, not southward. So you've gone far, but you haven't gone far towards the equator.
No.
And it's just a subtle reminder. One of those little reminders that the hobbits get every once in a while, like, you're not as far from home as you might think.
And it's a big world. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get the geography lesson, which is great.
Of course.
Thank you very
always
much for
helpful.
That,
I love that. Yeah.
We get the first hints of Rohan. Well, not the first hints. We've heard it mentioned before, but now we're getting close to it.
Yeah.
Rohan coming up. We get the Limlight.
Yeah.
We get Fangorn.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And of course, the Limlight, remember, is the river that comes out of Fangorn. It runs parallel to Anduin for a bit in that north-south line, but then turns east towards it and joins it in the fens just south of Rauros.
That's right.
And Tolkien says that it is the northern border of Rohan in his unfinished index, which is exactly what Aragorn here says.
That's right. And in the same index, he gives us a little bit of word nerdery on that. The name is a partial translation of Sindarin Limlint.
Oh.
Now that means swift light. And in the nomenclature, Tolkien adds that the element light in this word means bright or clear.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's, maybe a a fast-running, clear river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Makes
I'd
sense.
imagine.
All right. Now, Anduin may be wide here, but Aragorn points out that orcs can shoot across the river and that some have even dared to cross the river and take some of the animals, including horses, of the Rohirrim, which it's one thing to take their cows or their pigs. It's another thing to take their horses, man.
Oh, yeah, you take their studs. I mean, that's that's big. I can't even think of the words to say for them. But I mean, we know how the Rohirrim feel about their horses. We know how special their horses are. And,
that's right.
And so by taking their studs, they're going to breed them with lesser horses, and they're going to, they're going to get some of that Rohirric stock in the horses that the enemy uses.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I mean, not only is that just a point of pride for the Rohirrim, but that's also minimizing a tactical advantage they have with their horses.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely it does. And especially in the long term, like you said, because taking their studs means they won't have the ability to raise the number of horses as quickly and easily.
Right. Mm-hmm. So then we get the next paragraph is in Sam's perspective. We didn't read this one, but he sees that, trees that seem hostile before, the hostile trees are gone.
Right.
Poor Sam seems to feel naked again, though. He feels the whole company is naked. It's like a bad dream. The whole company's naked.
Yeah, that's right. He's giving a speech and he realizes he's not wearing any clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
Poor Sam.
I wonder. No, probably not. I was thinking, like, when you think about those dreams that you have, and it's because you feel unprepared for something, right? Does Sam feel a little bit unprepared here, just in general? Is that why he keeps on going back to feeling naked? Probably reading too much into it. But
it's very Freudian, I suspect, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe Sam just has a thing. I don't know. Sam's a naturalist.
Maybe it's maybe it's not. Maybe there's nothing weird and subconscious about it. Maybe he feels in danger. He feels threatened. He doesn't feel safe.
Vulnerable.
Maybe that's all.
Vulnerable. Absolutely.
Yeah. Vulnerable is a good word. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what I do. I come up with good words every now and then.
You do.
But just every now and then. Don't count on it to happen with regularity, please.
Well, don't sell yourself short. You do all right.
All right. Well, I'm going to read some words here that are not mine, and that's going to actually make them really good. They're Tolkien's words for the next couple paragraphs here.
Assuming we don't decide to change them, like we sometimes do.
Like we sometimes do, yeah.
Before saying edit.
And only some of those sneak out.
Yep.
In the next day or two, as they went on, borne steadily southwards, this feeling of insecurity grew on all the company. Well, there you go. There's your answer. Yes. He felt the company was too naked. He felt naked, but here we get it for sure.
Now everybody's
feeling of insecurity grew on all the company. For a whole day, they took to their paddles and hastened forward. The banks slid by. Soon the river broadened and grew more shallow. Long, stony beaches lay upon the east, and there were gravel shoals in the water, so that careful steering was needed. The brown lands rose into bleak wolds, over which flowed a chill air from the east. On the other side, the meads had become rolling downs of withered grass amidst a land of fen and tussock. Frodo shivered, thinking of the lawns and fountains, the clear sun and gentle rains of Lothlorien. There was little speech and no laughter in any of the boats. Each member of the company was busy with his own thoughts. The heart of Legolas was running under the stars of a summer night in some northern glade amid the beech woods. Gimli was fingering gold in his mind and wondering if it were fit to be wrought into the housing of the lady's gift. Merry and Pippin in the middle boat were ill at ease, for Boromir sat muttering to himself, sometimes biting his nails as if some restlessness or doubt consumed him, sometimes seizing a paddle and driving the boat close behind Aragorn's. Then Pippin, who sat in the bow looking back, caught a queer gleam in his eye as he peered forward, gazing at Frodo. Sam had long ago made up his mind that, though boats were maybe not as dangerous as he had been brought up to believe, they were far more uncomfortable than even he had imagined. He was cramped and miserable, having nothing to do but stare at the winter lands crawling by and the gray water on either side of him. Even when the paddles were in use, he did not trust Sam with one. Probably a good idea.
That's probably for the best.
I think he might accidentally hit somebody on the top of the head if we're not careful.
He might. So yeah, as you said right at the beginning of that passage, the sense of insecurity is growing on all of them. It's not just Sam anymore. They're all feeling it. That tells us it is very real. This isn't just Sam being paranoid.
No, which can happen, but not this case. And they're actually feeling so vulnerable that they decide to pick up the pace. They actually now start paddling instead of drifting.
Yeah.
The river gets wider and shallower, and now it's a little more dangerous because of the gravel shoals. And we start to see the landscape change a little bit more. Now the brown lands rise into these wolds. Now, our UK listeners don't need this defined for them, but for everybody else, a wold is a forest land, specifically a wooded upland.
Right.
That's on the east side. And then on the west side, now we've got fen and tussock over here. So it's definitely continuing to change.
Yeah. And we see the company that, nobody's talking, nobody's laughing, very little talking, no laughing.
That's so significant. No laughter. Yeah.
Yeah. Each member of the company busy with his own thoughts. What do you make of that? Do you think, are they thinking of the past or are they thinking of the future?
That's the interesting thing. I love how we then get a very specific glimpse into the minds of each of the company. Well, except Aragorn. We don't really see Aragorn's thoughts. And Boromir, we don't get in his head, but we see his actions that reflect his thoughts.
Yeah,
so
quite.
I think it's just an opportunity to kind of pause and look and say, what's everybody thinking about now? Some of them are thinking about the past and some in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really nice little transition, like sort of cutaway to what they're all thinking.
This is one of those interesting cinematic moments, isn't it? You could get a tight shot on each one and then it fades to the vision that they're having, right?
Yeah. So let's go through them all. So Legolas is dreaming the way elves dream.
Right.
Running in a glade under the stars.
Like a waking dream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Back home, presumably among the beechwoods.
I don't know. Is that past? Is that future? I don't know. Maybe he's just fantasizing.
I'm thinking past, right? He's thinking about moments that he's had
summer night.
Because it's a northern glade.
Probably so.
So it's probably back home, in the Elven Kingdom there in Mirkwood.
Yeah. Gimli is fingering gold in his mind and thinking about the gift from Galadriel. I kind of love that.
Very much a future.
Very much. I mean,
I know.
Exactly. He's really thinking about what he's going to do with this. I love that we still see the hold that it has on him.
Yes, I do too.
Still thinking about it. Merry and Pippin, I suppose, are thinking firmly of the present.
The present in the very near future, yes.
Kind of surviving the very next moment, really.
Yes, they are.
Getting ever more uncomfortable, ill at ease, with Boromir just being kind of creepy, really.
Yeah. I mean, muttering to himself, biting his nails, sometimes tailgating Aragorn. I mean, Boromir is like creepy Uncle Boromir here at this point.
Yeah.
Really generating a lot of discomfort for Merry and Pippin.
We haven't talked about this theme in a while, but this is the ring at work again.
Yes,
I feel like through most of Lórien, with the exception of the mirror, right? The ring was pretty much not at work too much.
Kind of neutralized
here,
in a way, I imagine.
It is back with a vengeance, and poor Boromir
really is
getting the brunt of it.
That's the thing. We talked about the ring kind of choosing its targets. And it seemed, once it became clear that Galadriel was going to turn down this temptation, it's almost as though the ring was like, all right, fine, let me find the weakest.
Yeah,
link.
Who's next? Who's the next? Yeah, it kind of went.
I'm going
to
to shoot high first.
Person.
I'm going to aim for the most
powerful person in the room.
Yeah, and if that's a no,
okay, who's an easy target?
Yeah,
because Aragorn's already past the temptation.
That's right. Aragorn has, and it knows that it doesn't want to stay with Frodo, like we talked about before. Frodo is a risk because the ring, presumably, possibly, is aware that Frodo wants to destroy it.
Yeah.
It knows, if it knows anything, it knows that Boromir does not want to destroy it. It's quite aware that Boromir would like it very much.
Everybody knows that Boromir doesn't want to destroy the ring.
That is correct. Even unnamed elf number 4 in the Council of Elrond is aware of that. That's right.
Yeah.
Man, Boromir being totally creepy. Sam's thoughts are very much in the present. Get me out of here. He is just
I don't like
miserable.
I don't like this boat thing.
Maybe it's not as dangerous. Maybe it's not going to tip over. I don't care. I'm still miserable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor guy. And no paddles for you, Sam.
You're going to hurt somebody or yourself.
Quite possibly yourself. That's a very good point. And then even though we don't read the next paragraph, because again, we'd have to read the whole thing. We really want to, but can't. He seems to see something. We're going to read a little bit more about that next as you pick up that night's camping.
I know you just transitioned. I just realized we don't see Frodo.
No, you're right. I mean,
Frodo.
We see him, but we don't get in his head.
We don't get in his head.
No, we don't.
I wonder what Frodo's thinking about right now.
Boy, that's a very good question.
I mean, he's definitely sad because he's left Lórien. We know that.
Yeah, there's a
So
lot
that
of
might be
sorrow
something
there.
he's thinking about. And he's probably just tremendously nervous, sad about the decision he's going to have to make soon. I
That's a very
mean,
good
I have
point.
to think that
I think that's all he can think about at this point is the decision he's
Probably.
going to have to make.
Probably, yeah.
But you're right. It's interesting that Tolkien makes the intentional decision not to show us the thoughts of Aragorn or
and Frodo, the two people who are really the leaders of the group at this point.
They really are. The two people whose decisions will matter the most.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Interesting.
I wonder if it's because we see so much of those guys that Tolkien wanted to sort of remind us a little bit about what's going on with these second-tier characters, the supporting cast, if you will.
Could be. Maybe some of the ordinary folks, the more ordinary folks. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Interesting. Well, with that, why don't I go ahead and read the next bit here?
I think that's probably a good idea.
That night, they camped on a small eyot close to the western bank. Sam lay rolled in blankets beside Frodo. I had a funny dream an hour or two before we stopped, Mr. Frodo, he said. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. Funny it was anyway. Well, what was it? Said Frodo, knowing that Sam would not settle down until he had told his tale, whatever it was. I haven't seen or thought of anything to make me smile since we left Lothlorien. It wasn't funny that way, Mr. Frodo. It was queer, all wrong if it wasn't a dream, and you had best hear it. It was like this. I saw a log with eyes. The log's all right, said Frodo. There are many in the river, but leave out the eyes. That I won't, said Sam. 'Twas the eyes as made me sit up, so to speak. I saw what I took to be a log floating in the half-light behind Gimli's boat, but I didn't give much heed to it. Then it seemed as if the log was slowly catching us up, and that was peculiar, as you might say, seeing as we were all floating on the stream together. Just then I saw the eyes, two pale sort of points, shiny-like, on a hump at the near end of the log. What's more, it wasn't a log, for it had paddle feet, like a swan's almost, only they seemed bigger and kept dipping in and out of the water. That's when I sat right up and rubbed my eyes, meaning to give a shout if it was still there when I had rubbed the drowse out of my head. For the whatever it was coming along fast now and getting close behind Gimli. But whether those two lamps spotted me moving and staring, or whether I came to my senses, I don't know. When I looked again, it wasn't there. Yet I think I caught a glimpse, with the tail of my eye, as the saying is, of something dark shooting under the shadow of the bank. I couldn't see no more eyes, though. I said to myself, dreaming again, Sam Gamgee, I said, and I said no more just then, but I've been thinking since, and now I'm not so sure. What do you make of it, Mr. Frodo? I should make nothing of it but a log and the dusk and sleep in your eyes, Sam, said Frodo, if this was the first time that those eyes had been seen. But it isn't. I saw them away back north before we reached Lórien, and I saw a strange creature with eyes climbing to the flet that night. Haldir saw it too. And do you remember the report of the elves that went after the orc band? Ah, said Sam. I do, and I remember more, too. I don't like my thoughts, but thinking of one thing and another, and Mr. Bilbo's stories and all, I fancy I could put a name on the creature at a guess. A nasty name. Gollum, maybe?
Probably. That'd be my best guess.
I think that's a winning guess.
Good job, Sam. Good job. You figured out the obvious,
Ouch.
Sherlock.
Sam Captain Obvious? Is that what you're saying?
Well, he's no Sherlock Holmes, that's for sure. So let's go back to the beginning of your passage and talk about this word eyot.
Oh, please, let's talk about this word, because I love this word.
Yeah,
it comes up 3 times in this section we're reading today, and never again in this volume of Lord of the Rings. So, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, this word eyot is probably derived from Old English ie, which means island, with a diminutive suffix. Now, that makes perfect sense because that would mean little island, and the meaning of the word is a small island.
Oh, there you
now,
go.
these days we'd probably call that an islet. So, eyot is a somewhat archaic word, but I noticed when I was looking at the OED that there were a few examples of it over the past 100 years or so, so it's not exactly one of those dustbin of history words that Tolkien's resurrected.
No, it's not, but it is a word choice that some of Tolkien's critics have pounced on, too. Interestingly, in a 1969 study of Tolkien, a critical study of Tolkien, American scholar Catherine R. Stimson mocks Tolkien's prose style, saying, and I'm quoting actually from Michael Drout's J.R.R. Tolkien Encyclopedia that quotes her as saying, shunning ordinary diction, he also wrenches syntax. And then she invents phrases like, to an eyot they came, in parody of his typical fronting of adverbials. That analysis, of course, is Michael Drout's.
And it's also Michael Drout who offers a priceless response to this criticism. This is actually in his lecture, How to Read J.R.R. Tolkien, which is that lecture that you can find on YouTube. We talked to him about it in episode 66, and we'll post a link to it again in our show notes. But around the 50-minute mark of that lecture, Drout brings up Stimson's criticism, and then he responds to it by saying that these archaisms are contributing to the pervasive sense that The Lord of the Rings is part of a long textual tradition. Also, he says, eyot is the technically correct name for what Tolkien's talking about, a low, gravelly semi-island that only sticks out of the water when the river water level is low. Furthermore, and I'll go ahead and paraphrase Drout a little bit here, but basically he says that eyot is an Anglo-Saxon-derived word, and this occurrence of the word appears on the border of Rohan. So Drout says, turns out that eyot is exactly the appropriate word. Fail for poor Miss Stimson.
Fail. Ouch. Remind me not to get into any arguments with Professor Drout.
Seriously, yeah.
You probably won't have to remind me of that, though. But so let's get on to Sam's funny dream. And no, it's not that kind of funny. 3 hobbits and a dwarf walk into a bar,
It's not ha-ha funny. It's more terrifying. What is that thing following me funny?
Right, exactly. Which I've never qualified as funny.
No.
I never say, I had this funny dream about a clown with sharp knives, cutting people to shreds. No, that's not funny.
And I love that Sam tells the story I don't know if he's just figuring it out as he's talking about it, or if he's
I almost think he is. He's kind of thinking
I think
out
he is,
loud,
because he's like, I saw a log with eyes, and you know what? It wasn't a log.
That's right. That's right. That's right. No, what's more, it wasn't a log. I know I told you it was a log, but it wasn't a log.
Yeah, I told you it was a log 30 seconds ago, but you know what? It wasn't a log. I just realized, no, it totally wasn't a log. It was a guy, because logs don't have legs.
And then I said to myself, dream it again, Sam, I said, and I said no more just then. I love that
I love
line.
it. It's great.
I said 3 times.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he's like, oh, I've been thinking, and maybe I'm not sure. What do you think? And he's clearly
instead of just saying, hey,
loud.
Frodo, I think Gollum might be following us. He tells the
or
whole
something with paddle feet and big eyes. And, it sounds a lot like what Bilbo described as Gollum, but yeah.
Something like that, but no.
But no. So we get the description, of course, right? This thing floating behind the last of the boats, but catching us up. The eyes on the head, or as he described, the eyes on a hump at the near end of the log. But it wasn't a log. And then the paddle feet, too,
Yeah. And then he rubbed his eyes, and he was going to alert everybody, but then it was gone.
Though maybe still alerting everybody isn't a bad idea.
I know. But
though we'll get that again shortly. I think we'll have plenty of criticism about people not talking about the things they see.
I know, and I do want to talk about that. It's another kind
we
of
will. I promise you we will. It's like, what is the point of secrets in this group? But we'll get to that. All right.
But then he said he thought he saw something dart under the bank and just assumed it was a dream. And I'm realizing now, as we've just kind of recapped the story, although, we kind of laugh at Sam kind of stringing Frodo along with this, but, Tolkien's doing that Tolkien thing where he has a character tell the story, and it puts you right there. Even though this happened in the past and this is kind of a flashback, you're seeing it just as Sam saw it. And it really does build suspense.
Oh, yeah, it definitely does. It's very creepy. It's very tense.
Yeah.
And Frodo immediately understands, because, I would agree with you that it was just a dream if I hadn't seen something similar that I didn't tell anybody about. Which,
because nobody tells anybody when they see Gollum.
Nobody tells me anything. It's like, we just don't even bother telling people important things. And he says, I saw it before we reached Lórien, and I saw it again on the Flet.
That's right. Now, Hammond and Skull point out that in the scheme that Tolkien put together, and that's part of the Marquette manuscript that we've referenced a few times on the show these last couple of seasons, Tolkien gives some details of Gollum's tracking of the company, and that kind of helps us think through how he's been following them.
Right.
January 15th, Tolkien says he dogs the company and climbs up Flet, then escapes and haunts west borders of Lórien. On January 17th, Tolkien says that he spends many days lurking near Lórien, moving south.
Right. But then on January 24th, a week later, we learn Gollum captured by Ugluk. Now, that's one of Saruman's orc leaders, not Sauron's, remember, and that becomes relevant later. But Gollum escapes after revealing that hobbits of Shire were with Gandalf. and enough is said to make Ugluk certain that the ring was with the company.
Mm.
And then sure enough, about 3 weeks after that, on February 16th, he sees their departure from Lórien and follows.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
The pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. Boy, that scheme really does help, doesn't it, that timeline?
It really does.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Again, it's, we know that Tolkien was painstaking in his attention to
Yeah.
detail with the timeline and things like that. And it's great when we can get a little insight into that and start to see the pieces on the chessboard that we don't actually see moving in the narrative.
Right, right.
We know they're moving.
Yes, we do.
So yeah, Sam finally kind of puts it all together, guesses Gollum. He's, again, as I think we said a little bit, just obviously the evidence of his eyes and Bilbo's stories. Okay, yeah, this has got to be Gollum, right? And Frodo's like, yep, seems like it. He must have been in Moria and has been following us since. Right. And we actually get a little bit more on that from Unfinished Tales.
Oh, yeah, we do. Hunt for the Ring.
So I'm going to take us all the way back to after Gollum flees Mirkwood. And I think we may have talked about this on the show before.
Uh-huh.
So Tolkien says that after fleeing Mirkwood, it seems clear that pursued both by elves and orcs, Gollum crossed the Anduin, probably by swimming, and so eluded the hunt of Sauron. But being still hunted by elves, and not yet daring to pass near Lórien, only the lure of the ring itself made him dare to do this afterwards. He hid himself in Moria. That was probably in the autumn of the year, after which all trace of him was lost. Until the Fellowship came through Moria.
Well, right. Yeah, which we talked about in The Bridge of Khazad-dûm.
That was really fortunate for him. That's Tolkien actually says, he was starving to death, basically, and it was a good thing that the Fellowship came. Good thing for him that the Fellowship came through when they did.
Absolutely. Well, it turns out to be a good thing for the entire world.
Everybody.
We just didn't know it at the time, right? Yeah.
Eucatastrophe.
Yes, indeed. So Sam, in the paragraph we're not going to read here, acknowledges that, look, we're in mortal danger, so I'm going to go ahead and take first watch. My curiosity, though, he says, no need to trouble Strider or the others tonight. Why not? Why not trouble Strider?
Yeah, I wonder about this. I mean, I don't know. Is Sam just trying to... Is he just trying to take a little initiative and kind of seem like he has things under control? I don't think anybody would expect him to have things under control. So I don't know why
he's Sam.
Yeah.
The expectations for him are pretty low. They're just be faithful to Frodo. That's about it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Need to trouble Strider or the others tonight. Maybe it's just that they're already asleep. That's the only thing I can think of. That hey, let's not wake anybody up. I'll keep watch for the rest of the night because I certainly don't want to be awake in the boat. I'd rather sleep then. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, maybe he recognizes that Aragorn has been wanting everybody to save their strength because things might get worse. Yeah. They might need their strength later. Maybe he figures let everybody get their sleep because if Gollum is following us, we may have a confrontation with him tomorrow.
And that's true.
So
that's true.
Letting everybody know that he's following, what's it going to do at this point? Might as well, let people know in the morning. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Though Gollum seems much more likely to attack at night, given his...
Yeah, you're right. That's true. He does.
Skill set,
That's a good point. Yeah.
I'd see the threat as being much greater at night, but Sam may not be thinking that way.
Yeah. But Frodo agrees. I mean, Frodo doesn't say, you know what, that's not the right move. Why don't we go ahead and wake up Aragorn, let him know?
Yeah.
He agrees, but only if Sam will wake him.
Right. You know what? Actually, I just read this. Sam does realize that the threat is at night. He says, we'll feel nasty fingers around our necks one of these nights if we ever wake up to feel anything. Right. So he knows that the threat is at night, but I guess he assumes that as long as he's alert, that he'll be able to wake people up in time.
Maybe.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. And we'll still get to more, oh, I didn't bother to tell you that either sort of thing in a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of secrets have been kept.
Like, why is everybody out to not tell anybody about Gollum?
It's like Boromir, I get. I understand why Boromir is not saying what's on his mind right now.
Yeah.
That I get.
That's for sure. But I don't get this, let's not talk about Gollum.
Right.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and read the next little bit. In the dead hours, Frodo came out of a deep, dark sleep to find Sam shaking him. It's a shame to wake you, whispered Sam, but that's what you said. There's nothing to tell, or not much. I thought I heard some soft plashing and a sniffing noise a while back, but you hear a lot of such queer sounds by a river at night. He lay down, and Frodo sat up, huddled in his blankets, and fought off his sleep. Minutes or hours passed slowly, and nothing happened. Frodo was just yielding to the temptation to lie down again, when a dark shape, hardly visible, floated close to one of the moored boats. A long whitish hand could be dimly seen as it shot out and grabbed the gunwale. 2 pale, lamp-like eyes shone coldly as they peered inside, and then they lifted and gazed up at Frodo on the eyot. They were not more than a yard or 2 away, and Frodo heard the soft hiss of intaken breath. He stood up, drawing Sting from its sheath, and faced the eyes. Immediately their light was shut off. There was another hiss and a splash, and the dark log shape shot away downstream into the night. Aragorn stirred in his sleep, turned over, and sat up. "What is it?" he whispered, springing up and coming to Frodo. "I felt something in my sleep. Why have you drawn your sword?" "Gollum," answered Frodo. "Or at least so I guess." "Ah," said Aragorn. "So you know about our little footpad, do you? He padded after us all through Moria and right down to Nimmerdale. Since we took to boats, he's been lying on a log and paddling with hands and feet. I've tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. I hoped the river voyage would beat him, but he is too clever a waterman. We shall have to try going faster tomorrow. You lie down now, and I will keep watch for what's left of the night. I wish I could lay my hands on the wretch. We might make him useful. But if I cannot, we shall have to try and lose him. He is very dangerous, quite apart from murder by night on his own account. He may put any enemy that is about on our track."
Once again, murder by night, Gollum's MO. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much,
They
which
all
is
know
what
it.
he's done. I mean, we hear about that with the woodman
Yeah.
as well, coming
Yeah.
in and stealing babies in the middle of
Creeping
the night.
into windows and
Oh,
robbing cradles and
just, yeah.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of that. So Sam wakes Frodo, as he's been ordered to do. Nothing to
Right.
report, really, but, Frodo said wake him up, so he's
Right.
waking him up.
You told me to, so I'm doing what you told me, sir.
Yep. So he goes and gets some sleep. Frodo takes the watch, fighting off sleep. He's almost falling asleep when he sees a dark shape floating close to a moored boat.
That's got to be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And then we see the hand on the gunwale. That's the word that's spelled like it's gun whale, but it is pronounced gunwale. It's the upper edge of a boat's side, and it's named that because it was the place on the boat that served to support the guns, which, well, makes that arguably an anachronistic term. But then he sees that hand pull, and the creature, whatever it is, climbs up, peers into the boat, and then up at Frodo, who's just,
right.
I mean, a yard or 2 away, 3 to 6 feet. That is super, super close. Frodo pulls Sting, and whoop, Gollum's gone.
Gone. Aragorn's woken up by it.
Yeah, of course.
Frodo tells him what's going on, and Aragorn does what everybody else has been doing. Oh, yeah, Gollum. Yeah.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, I knew he was following us.
What is up with that?
Maybe I should have said something about it earlier.
maybe that would have been helpful.
Maybe we could have got everybody on the same page about Gollum following us.
We're being followed by Gollum, and he is capable of killing us at night.
Yeah.
So we need to keep our eye out. That might be a useful thing to say. It's still
it's like how
mind-blowing.
nobody calls the cops in the horror movie,
Right. Can you just pick up the phone and dial 911? It's not that hard, really.
Yeah.
I don't understand. What is Aragorn's purpose here in not sharing this information? Oh, yeah, he's been following us since Moria. We could have talked about it in Lórien. Oh, by the way, Gollum was following us, and I bet he'll follow us again. We should probably keep an eye out.
I mean, he did think that they would lose him.
That's true.
So maybe he thought, oh, we're going to lose him on the river. It's not going to be a big deal. No sense in freaking everybody out. But by now, if he's known that Gollum's been following them since Moria, so maybe he thought we would lose him once we get out of Moria. They didn't.
Right.
So then he must have thought, okay, maybe we'll lose him when we get to Lórien.
Which is reasonable considering they ended up staying there for a month.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Nobody expected that.
But he hung out there eating whatever and then, started following them again once they left. And now they're on the water, and he thought maybe they'd lose him once they're on the water, and they haven't. It's like, at this point, like, dude, just let everybody know. Right. Gollum's behind us. And
you've even tried to catch him.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Oh, by the way, look what I caught in the middle of the night. Really? Just tell us, man.
Yeah.
You're the leader.
There's got to be a reason for this. I can't think of what it could be.
Maybe I just don't want the hobbits to worry. I especially don't want Frodo and Sam to be, afraid.
That could be
That's the only thing I can think of. But that seems kind of counterproductive. But
That could be it, because we do know that Aragorn did not realize that Frodo knew about it, as we see from his,
Oh, yeah.
you know about our little
so
footpad.
you know
Yeah.
about our little footpad, do you?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you have some word nerdery on footpad, don't you?
Of course I do. Yes, a footpad is a thief or highwayman. The second part of that word, pad, is actually not the common word pad. It's actually an obsolete word for a road or a highway. It's actually cognate with path.
Okay.
So it basically just relates to somebody who's kind of
Hangs
hanging
out
out
on the path
by the roads on foot. Yeah,
to
waiting
rob people, right?
to rob people. Although I think Tolkien is having Aragorn use it in a slightly punning way here, because he calls him a footpad, which is pad as in path, but then he starts referring to Gollum's padding, and he talks about his paddling feet. So
Yeah,
I think
you're
there
right.
could be a little bit of a subtle pun there.
A little wordplay. Wouldn't put it
Yeah.
past the professor for that. So Aragorn's tried to catch Gollum, but to no avail. He's a clever waterman, as we know. He's pretty good with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out the Ian Malcolm line from Jurassic Park. Must go faster, must go faster. We're gonna have to move here.
Yeah,
Gollum's a little
exactly.
smaller than a gigantic T-Rex chasing after the Jeep, but nonetheless, we got to move faster.
I want to see that rear view mirror shot,
but with Gollum in it.
With Gollum.
That would be great. That'd be great. We'll stitch Aragorn's face over Jeff Goldblum's and put Gollum in the rearview mirror.
Yep.
So, he is dangerous on his own, as Aragorn says, but here's the real risk. He could bring danger to us. There are enemies out there.
Yeah.
He is going to bring them to us, and that's a problem. We can deal with one Gollum, but we can't deal with what he can bring down our way. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, a threat that must be addressed.
Yes, indeed. So, and then we're not going to read the next couple of paragraphs, but Gollum does seem to have wisely kept his distance after this encounter with Sting. And in the meantime, the company starts picking up the pace. They're paddling now at length to move faster, and now they're moving mostly at night, which is interesting. So again, now they're, I think, a little concerned about spies.
Probably because they don't want to be sleeping at night when Gollum might come strangle them.
Ah, yes, that too, as well as the spies. But yeah, they are lying as hidden as the land allowed, is what it tells us. And really, frankly, a lot of time passes. 3 days, basically, of mostly nothing. There's a very brief description of the end-of-day weather. And then I'm going to have you pick up on that on day 8.
Okay. The next day, the country on either side began to change rapidly. The banks began to rise and grow stony. Soon they were passing through a hilly, rocky land, and on both shores there were steep slopes buried in deep breaks of thorn and sloe, tangled with brambles and creepers. Behind them stood low, crumbling cliffs, and chimneys of gray, weathered stone dark with ivy, and beyond these again there rose high ridges crowned with wind-writhen firs. They were drawing near to the gray hill country of the Aemon Muil, the southern march of Wilderland. There were many birds about the cliffs and the rock chimneys, and all day, high in the air, flocks of birds had been circling, black against the pale sky. As they lay in their camp that day, Aragorn watched the flights doubtfully, wondering if Gollum had been doing some mischief, and the news of their voyage was now moving in the wilderness. Later, as the sun was setting, and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, he descried a dark spot against the fading light, a great bird high and far off, now wheeling, now flying on slowly southwards. "What is that, Legolas?" he asked, pointing to the northern sky. "Is it, as I think, an eagle?" "Yes," said Legolas. "It is an eagle, a hunting eagle. I wonder what that forebodes. It is far from the mountains." "We will not start until it is fully dark," said Aragorn.
Yeah, probably a good idea, Aragorn. Let's wait until it's dark. You got an eagle out there looking for you.
That's interesting, the bit about the eagle. We'll get back to that in just a minute. But
We will. And it may not be a bad guy, but Aragorn doesn't want to take that chance. So on day 8 here, the landscape changes, right? The banks rise. They're now rocky. We get slopes covered with thickets of thorny plants. I love this imagery. And then the cliffs and ridges and this great phrase, the wind-writhen firs.
I love that word, writhen. I always think back to Tuor's coming to Gondolin, the gate of writhen iron.
Yes.
I love that. And we actually talked about this word writhen back in episode 100. That was part 2 of Shadow of the Past. Basically just a past participle of the word writhe. So it means twisted or, kind of bent. And we actually talked, back in that episode, we talked about the word wraith, and we discussed how it might have descended from some unrecorded noun that's related to the verb writhe, similar to the relationship between the words raid and ride. I think we talked about that back in that episode.
Yes.
Raid and ride are actually related, and there's some speculation that wraith and writhe might have a similar relationship.
That would make sense, certainly. Fascinating. So now they're nearing the Emyn Muil, and you have a little bit on that from, well, what else? The source that I don't have.
Parma Eldalambron 17. Thank you very much.
Go.
Yes, Amon is the plural of Sindarin Amon, hill. Remember, we talked about this not too long ago. Sindarin usually forms plurals by changing the vowels, and so singular Amon, hill, becomes plural Amon, hills. Muil is twilight or shadow or vagueness. That specifically is in there, vagueness. So I kind of love the idea that we could call these the hills of vagueness.
Oh, there's some hills over there somewhere.
Somewhere around there.
They're just kind of like, they're like hills. They're just sort of
they're hillish.
Generally over there.
Can you be more specific? No, I can't. They're hills of vagueness.
That's the whole point. The mountains of specificity and the hills of vagueness.
We are far from the mountains of specificity.
That's right. We really
you
are.
Invented the hills of vagueness.
It sounds like something out of a Monty Python skit.
I hope so.
Hills of vagueness.
That's what I'm going for. I don't know if
stuff.
I'm reaching it, but
I think you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Back to the text.
Yes, please.
So the birds are a bit of concern to Aragorn. Thinks they might be some spies, perhaps as a result of Gollum. Maybe he's been causing some trouble. Now there's spies about. He spots a bird, gets a little clarification from Legolas. Is that an eagle? And Legolas says, yes, it's a hunting eagle. Not a Nazgul. That's good.
No. That's true. Could be a lot worse. Yeah.
But why is it so far out from the mountains?
Right. It's searching for something. It would not be this far from its home.
Right. So even though this is not the horrible thing that we're all expecting, just the fact that an eagle is so far from the mountains is not good news.
No.
This eagle is hunting something. This eagle knows something is out there.
Absolutely.
And Aragorn's response to that is, okay, well, we're going to wait until it's completely dark to start again. We're not going to start at twilight this time.
Yeah, it's a good idea to start when it's completely dark at that point. I mean, you've got possible spies about, and like we've observed earlier, Gollum is a threat at night, so it's best to be traveling during that time.
Yep, for sure.
So that's where we're going to go now as night 8 approaches, and I'm going to pick up there. The 8th night of their journey came. It was silent and windless. The gray east wind had passed away. The thin crescent of the moon had fallen early into the pale sunset, but the sky was clear above, and though far away in the south there were great ranges of cloud that still shone faintly, in the west stars glinted bright. "Come," said Aragorn, "we will venture one more journey by night. We are coming to reaches of the river that I do not know well, for I have never journeyed by water in these parts before, not between here and the rapids of Sarn-Gebir. But if I am right in my reckoning, those are still many miles ahead. Still, there are dangerous places even before we come there, rocks and stony eyots in the stream. We must keep a sharp watch and not try to paddle swiftly." To Sam in the leading boat was given the task of watchman. He lay forward, peering into the gloom. The night grew dark, but the stars above were strangely bright, and there was a glimmer on the face of the river. It was close on midnight, and they had been drifting for some while, hardly using the paddles, when suddenly Sam cried out. Only a few yards ahead, dark shapes loomed up in the stream, and he heard the swirl of racing water. There was a swift current, which swung left towards the eastern shore where the channel was clear. As they were swept aside, the travelers could see, now very close, the pale foam of the river lashing against sharp rocks that were thrust out far into the stream like a ridge of teeth. The boats were all huddled together. "Hoy there, Aragorn!" shouted Boromir, as his boat bumped into the leader. "This is madness! We cannot dare the rapids by night, but no boat can live in Sarn-Gebir, be it night or day." Thanks for the obvious, Captain Obvious.
A lot of those moments in this bit, aren't there?
Yeah. "Hoy, it's madness. We're in the rapids." Yeah, I know. That isn't where I want to go.
I didn't know we were that close to them. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I thought there were many miles to go. Nope,
I make one mistake on this trip.
Never going to hear the end of it.
All right. Back to the beginning of the passage you read. Silent night, windless night. The
Why do I want to sing a Christmas carol?
because it's extremely hot in your booth and you're just, it's a cry for
Anything.
help. You want it to be
Anything
winter.
for a Christmas tune, yeah. Oh, no.
The thin crescent of the moon had followed the sun early, fallen early into the pale sunset. Yep.
That was a beautiful phrase, isn't it?
It is,
fallen into the pale
fallen early
sunset.
into the pale sunset. Tilion chasing after Arion again.
That's right. He's getting close again. He keeps
Leave
thinking,
me
maybe
alone,
if I just keep
please.
working.
Leave me alone.
Every so often she gets a restraining order and he has to start all over. Yeah.
I know.
Poor guy.
But yeah, Aragorn makes one of the classic blunders. Thinks there are still many miles before they reach Sarngebir.
There still be many miles to go. Nope, there's not.
Nope.
You're just wrong. Might want to check Google Maps on that one.
Poor guy. One mistake. Come on, one. Well, okay, he makes a couple mistakes, but
this is a little dangerous, but you'll see they survive. Sam's the watchman, of course, because, of course, they're not going to give him a paddle, so let's give him a job.
Yep.
Helpfully, the night may be dark, but the stars are strangely bright, so he is able to see, though you would think he would hear this first. So drifting without their paddles, Sam sees the dark shapes and hears the rush of water.
Mm-hmm.
So then the boats get pulled towards the east. Now, this is important because of what's going to happen next. So the boats get caught in this current, pulled to the east of the rapids, towards the shore on the other side. And that's a good thing because in the middle are these sharp rocks that are now visible, and they are in the rapids.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not good.
Scary.
Not good.
Scary, scary time.
It's a surprisingly understated scene full of action, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, this would be a very exciting scene in a movie.
Oh, cinematically? Yeah, you bet.
It hasn't been captured cinematically yet that I've seen.
No.
Certainly not by any of the major adaptations. But yeah, Tolkien is so understated with it. It's kind of a blink and you miss it moment, but this is close to death.
This really is. Yeah, the whole group is almost done here against the rocks.
Yeah. Boromir, again, says the obvious. We can't brave the rapids at night, right? Actually, you know what? No, we can't do it at all because no boat can live in Sarngebir any time of day. So Aragorn's like, yeah, I know, dude. I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't realize you were that close. Okay, turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit tired listening to the sound of my tears.
Oh, no. And Boromir backs him up. Turn around, bright eyes.
Hey, guys, these boats will fall apart.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I have to put a stop to it right there. Every now and then we fall apart. Yeah.
Yep.
Goodness, that's just great stuff.
Terrible.
Or terrible stuff, as the case may be. Yeah.
Never thought we'd get a total Eclipse of the Heart reference on this show, but there you go.
Goodness, I did not ever think we would.
Nope. Anyway, yes, turn around, guys. Let's get out of here. Frodo, we didn't read this part, but Frodo's surprised at how quickly they've traveled. I think it's safe to say Aragorn is too.
I was about to say he's not the only one. I think they're all just a little surprised.
Yep.
Oh, hey, surprise, it's the rapids. All right. Well, I am going to have you pick up there after those two very brief paragraphs we didn't read, and I'm going to have you pick up right after that.
All right. With great efforts, they checked the boats and slowly brought them about. But at first they could make only small headway against the current, and all the time they were carried nearer and nearer to the eastern bank. Now dark and ominous it loomed up in the night. "All together, paddle!" shouted Boromir. "Paddle, or we shall be driven on the shoals." Even as he spoke, Frodo felt the keel beneath him grate upon stone. At that moment, there was a twang of bowstrings. Several arrows whistled over them, and some fell among them. One smote Frodo between the shoulders, and he lurched forward with a cry, letting go his paddle. But the arrow fell back, foiled by his hidden coat of mail. Another passed through Aragorn's hood, and a third stood fast in the gunwale of the second boat, close by Merry's hand. Sam thought he could glimpse black figures running to and fro upon the long shingle banks that lay under the eastern shore. They seemed very near. "Ich!" said Legolas, falling into his own tongue. "Orcs!" cried Gimli. "Gollum's doing, I'll be bound," said Sam to Frodo. "And a nice place to choose, too. The river seems set on taking us right into their arms." They all leaned forward, straining at the paddles. Even Sam took a hand. Every moment they expected to feel the bite of black-feathered arrows.
Mhm.
Many whined overhead or struck the water nearby, but there were no more hits. It was dark, but not too dark for the night eyes of orcs, and in the star glimmer they must have offered their cunning foes some mark, unless it was that the gray cloaks of Lórien and the gray timber of the elf-wrought boats defeated the malice of the archers of Mordor.
Unless. That's right. Unless it was. Oh,
And
no, they're gray. I can't see them anymore. Yeah. No.
It's elf magic, man. Come on.
It is. I know. It is elf magic. No doubt about that. So going back to the beginning of that passage, they managed to turn the boats around, but their slow progress upstream is countered by the continued movement towards the east bank, and they even start to feel the bottom of the boat scraping stone. That's bad news.
That is
That is really bad news. And if that wasn't bad enough, then you hear bowstrings and arrows start flying.
Yeah.
One hits Frodo. Thankfully, it hits him in the mail. I mean, just a few inches higher, this story is over, man. I mean, it hits him between the shoulders. It could have hit him right between C2 and C3, and it's all done.
You're not kidding, man. You can't be like, and Boromir grabs the ring, goes back home.
That's right. And Minas Tirith is saved for 2 years until Sauron takes it and the ring.
Yeah. Man.
Others, of course, are close calls. You know, we get Aragorn's hood and right there in the gunwale of the other boat, right by Merry's hand.
Right by Merry's hand, though. Man, that's scary.
Ouch. Scary thought.
Yeah. And Legolas and Gimli are the ones who ID the problem. Orcs.
Yeah.
We get it in Sindarin and in Westron.
Yes, we do.
I mean, who else would it be, really? At this
point? That's the thing, right?
You know.
Oh, no, it's the Rohirrim. Wait, no. I mean,
right. Yeah, it's totally orcs. Of course it's orcs.
Of course it's orcs. Who's attacking us? I don't know. It's orcs. It's totally orcs. It's always orcs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam's got an interesting observation. Gollum's doing I'll Be Bound. Is it true? Well, it turns out the answer is yes, but unintentionally. Mm-hmm. Now, earlier, remember I mentioned Ugluk, the leader of one of Saruman's band of orcs, that had captured Gollum and got information about the ring and the company from him.
Right.
Well, he sends messengers back to Saruman to let him know. Now, in that same manuscript document, which is called Scheme, we learn that 2 days later, Grishnak, having crossed Anduin near rapids, I'm quoting, and in the Scheme, Tolkien often shortens sentences. So,
yeah,
Grishnak, having crossed Anduin near rapids, comes up west side and intercepts Ugluk's messengers and learns their news. He retreats, makes contact with the Nazgul near Sarn-Gebir, and awaits orders. Now, as a reminder, Grishnak is one of Sauron's orcs, not one of Saruman's orcs. So now that all happened while the company were in Lórien, January 24th and January 26th, the company leaving on February 16th. But by February 22nd, we read in the Scheme that Grishnak's scouts get wind of approach of company. A Nazgul is summoned, but Sauron will not yet permit the Nazgul to cross west of Anduin. The next day, orcs are foiled, Legolas shoots down Nazgul, the orcs dismayed, but Grishnak crosses Anduin and daringly pushes down west shore in pursuit. He believes company is making for Minas Tirith. So Gollum getting that information to Ugluk, Ugluk's messengers going, them getting captured by Grishnak, and Grishnak learning the news. Yes. This is Gollum's doing, but not on purpose.
But not on purpose. Yeah. Gollum's not that calculating.
No.
At least not in that way.
No. Because he knows that if the orcs take this, they're going to get the ring.
Yeah. So the orcs are there, but they're not hitting them.
Right.
Why? We actually get this little thought process in the narrative. Why are they missing? We know that orcs have good night vision. There's plenty of starlight. We saw that the stars were unusually bright.
Right.
Could it be these gray cloaks and gray boats?
I think the narrator is telling it must be. Yeah.
I think so. That unless is kind of misleading. That's totally what it is. It's that elf magic that's helping him keep out of sight.
Oh, it's magic. You know.
Oh, you get that one. Yeah.
So now they turn west and push for the opposite shore, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and pick up. Legolas laid down his paddle and took up the bow that he had brought from Lórien. Then he sprang ashore and climbed a few paces up the bank. Stringing the bow and fitting an arrow, he turned, peering back over the river into the darkness. Across the water there were shrill cries, but nothing could be seen. Frodo looked up at the elf standing tall above him as he gazed into the night, seeking a mark to shoot at. His head was dark, crowned with sharp white stars that glittered in the black pools of the sky behind. But now, rising and sailing up from the south, the great clouds advanced, sending out dark outriders into the starry fields. A sudden dread fell on the company. "Elbereth Gilthoniel," sighed Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape, like a cloud and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south and sped towards the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, blacker than the pits in the night. Fierce voices rose up to greet it from across the water. Frodo felt a sudden chill running through him and clutching at his heart. There was a deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound in his shoulder. He crouched down as if to hide. Suddenly, the great bow of Lórien sang. Shrill went the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him, the winged shape swerved. There was a harsh, croaking scream as it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore. The sky was clean again. There was a tumult of many voices far away, cursing and wailing in the darkness, and then silence. Neither shaft nor cry came again from the east that night.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, man. It's getting real.
It is.
It's getting real. And if you didn't know it was getting real, you knew it was getting real when Legolas put down the paddle and picked up the bow, man.
Yes, you do. That is your clue right there. Notches an arrow, too. Yeah.
Yeah, notches an arrow, looking for a target. And then we switch to Frodo's perspective. Kind of like
That's right.
watching Legolas.
Yeah, we're looking
like,
up
whoa.
now. Yeah. So we see Legolas looking for that target. We see the stars glittering behind his head. Then we get those great clouds from the south and that sudden dread. This is something we're going to see a lot of. This is always the first symptom, if you will, the first indicator of a Nazgul attack, especially the mounted ones.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we talked before about how terror is their weapon, right?
Yes,
that's
it
their
is.
main weapon.
Yes,
and Legolas, man, this cry from Legolas, Elbereth Gilthoniel, it's like, this is like his despair cry, you know? It reminds me of when he sees the Balrog, you know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he shouts, you know, a Balrog. And, you know, it's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knows this is bad. Dark
this is
shape,
very bad.
like a cloud, but it is a great winged creature.
A great winged creature, yes. Notice the explicit identifier here. I just want to point that out. The great winged creature that happens to be flying. It's just another reason to conclude the Balrog doesn't have wings. Tolkien usually includes significant descriptions like that. Just saying.
I'm just wondering if I'm pretentious for saying winged. Am I pretentious?
A little bit.
Saying,
yeah, a little bit, but I like it. I like it. Keep on with that pretentiousness. It helps. It helps elevate me. I bring you down to earth, so it balances out.
Well, you know, I just look at it and I say winged. I don't know what would you say wing?
Well, it all depends. I mean, if it's put to music and I see two notes there, I'm going to sing it winged.
Really? I don't know. I see it. I see winged.
No,
for
I
some
know.
Reason, but,
I see wing. I see winged. I see winged.
Potato, whatever.
Let's call the whole thing.
Let's
off,
call the
really.
whole thing off. Yes, you're absolutely right. A great creature with wings, however we choose to pronounce that.
That's a great way of avoiding that. Yes.
And I think you're right. Tolkien does tend to include such significant descriptions. I'm sure somebody is going to.
I'm
tell us,
sure.
well, he didn't hear, but I mean, again, it's just a reminder that, you know, wings on a creature of ultimate evil are still a pretty rare thing, I guess is the key takeaway there.
Yeah, even the first dragons weren't winged or winged.
Right. So when this great winged thing comes, fierce voices rise up to greet it. The orcs they're just like cheering, you know?
Yeah.
Our guy is here.
Woo-hoo. Nazgul, he's our man. He can't do it. No one can. Yeah.
I would love to see them just like each hold up, a poster board with one letter written on it.
Give me an N. Give me an A.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Frodo's reaction, though, this is
know.
chilling. See what I did there?
Literal way. Wow. Nicely done.
Feels this chill, deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound in his shoulder.
Yeah.
Like
the
this
memory
actually
of an old
is the
wound.
memory of
It
an
is.
old
That's
wound on his
correct.
shoulder.
That's correct. Let's be real clear. Yeah.
Yeah, let's be absolutely clear. This is his wound. This is the Morgul blade wound in his shoulder.
Yes.
Aching.
Yeah.
Crouches to hide. I mean, he's just terrified. Absolutely terrified.
And it's a response to clearly who it is on this winged steed, if you will.
That is a fantastic point. I'm glad you brought it up because we're reading this book for the nth time. We all know what this is. But if you're reading this for the first time, this is your clue that this is one of the ring wraiths again.
And quite possibly the one who stabbed him.
Could be.
I don't know if we know. We'll have to double check scheme. That'll actually be a nice thing for the P5, don't you think? We'll see if we know which one it is. I don't think
let's see if
we
can find anything on that.
Okay.
Legolas springs into action.
Yes.
The great bow sang. No slender bows here, folks.
That's right. No more slender bows. We're done with those slender bows. Slender bow wouldn't have reached this thing.
Yep. And he must hit it because there's this harsh croaking scream and the thing falls out of the sky.
When it says harsh croaking scream, I sort of hear the Wilhelm scream.
Oh, no. I hope not. I can't even do the Wilhelm scream, but I know
I can't either. Yeah. And then, of course, you get the reaction of the orcs to that. First he's our man sort of thing, the cheerleading deal. But now you get this tumult of cursing and wailing. And then there's nothing more.
That's it.
This just took the fight right out of them. Totally sucked their morale right out of just they're done.
It's like the Nazgul shows up and it's like +5 to morale.
Right.
Nazgul gets shot down and it's like
minus 10 to morale.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, man. No doubt about it. Well, we don't want to hear the tumult of your voices cursing and wailing in the darkness. So we have Bartleman's bag coming your way in just a minute. I work hard on these, Sean. I will have you know.
That's a good one. I like it. Thank you.
And even when that's done, as you know, folks, the talk does continue all night long at the Prancing Pony.
That is correct. We've always got lots of discussion happening in our social media spaces. At our common room on Facebook, you'll find comments, questions, corrections, and more on every episode, as well as updates from us throughout the week. Just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast on Facebook and click the like and follow buttons.
And now we have another common room over on Reddit. You can find some really great discussions there at r/PrancingPonyPod. And as always, you can find us on Twitter and on Instagram with the handle @PrancingPonyPod. So follow us wherever you happen to be. And please, if you like us, consider sharing us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, wherever you happen to find Tolkien fans.
And if you really want to let the world know your feelings about us, give us a review on Apple Podcasts. The more reviews we have, the more visible our podcast is. That helps others find us and this amazing community of Tolkien fans that we've built together.
Boy, you're not kidding. And if you'd like access to exclusive content like postscripts, quarterly specials, direct Discord access to the two of us, and more, check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to find out how you can join the Fellowship of the Podcast. Now, I think it's time to see what old Bartleman has in the mailbag for us. Sean?
All right. Well, we traveled through the Brownlands with the Fellowship today, and we took a look ahead to the next book where we find out that the Gardens of the Entwives used to be there. And I promised that we would come back to this, so here we are.
All right.
That actually seemed like a good reason to address this question from Sarah in Florida, who thought that maybe those giants that some hobbits had reported seeing on the North Moors, remember that all the way back in Book 1, Chapter 2? She thought maybe those giants were actually Entwives. And here's what she said.
Okay.
She said, I believe Treebeard says, when speaking to Merry and Pippin, that the Ents don't wander very far any longer, and also mentions that the Shire sounds like a place that the Entwives would have liked. My thought is that some of the Entwives, and this is still Sarah here, my thought is that some of the Entwives survived the war with Sauron and fled further west and north and settled in what later became the Old Forest. That would explain all the queerness that happened there if the Entwives fell asleep and turned Huornish or Treeish, and dangerous as the Ents did who fell asleep in Fangorn.
Besides the fact that she invented the word Huornish, which is a pretty cool word.
I love that word. Thank you.
I actually, it's an interesting speculation. Now, we should probably point out that when she refers to surviving the war with Sauron, she's talking about the war at the end of the Second Age, the War of the Last Alliance.
Right.
And for that, I want to go back to letter number 144 that Tolkien wrote to Naomi Mitchison. In that, he said, I think that, in fact, the Entwives have disappeared for good, being destroyed with their gardens in the War of the Last Alliance, when Sauron pursued a scorched earth policy and burned their land against the advance of the allies down the Anduin. Then he references Treebeard's comment about the Brownlands that we talked about earlier. Tolkien goes on to say, they survived only in the agriculture transmitted to men and hobbits. Some, of course, may have fled east or even have become enslaved. Tyrants, even in such tales, must have an economic and agricultural background to their soldiers and metalworkers. If any survived so, they would indeed be far estranged from the Ents, and any rapprochement would be difficult, unless experience of industrialized and militarized agriculture had made them a little more anarchic. I hope so. I don't know. So, Tolkien says himself that he doesn't think any Entwives would have survived and made it to the Shire, but he hopes they might have at least survived. What do we think? Sean, I'm going to let you start.
Oh, thank you.
Because I'm that kind of nice guy that says,
You are.
This is really hard.
It is hard because he kind of answers it, but then leaves it open, right? He says, I don't think they survived. And by the way, I'm the guy who wrote the book. But
right.
I don't know.
It's my story. I could say what they did, but I think they disappeared for good. But if they survived, and well, I hope so.
I don't know.
That's
I mean,
tough.
I have, here's my thought on it. Folks may not like this. I'm not sure. I tend to think that most, if not all, of the Entwives would have been wiped
Killed.
out
Yeah.
when Sauron pursued this scorched earth policy. Which, by the way, I wish we had more on this. Do you know if there's more on this anywhere?
Not that I'm aware of, but
writings?
I'm with you on that. I'd like to know, what did he do? What did he use?
What exactly did he do? I mean, we saw in the text here, even Aragorn didn't know what had happened, so it's obviously not something that's preserved in the lore.
Right.
But he did something terrible, that's for sure. Well,
yes, he did.
At any rate, I think that, most of them would have been wiped out in that. If some had fled, and maybe some of them had settled in the old forest and turned tree-ish, okay, maybe. That's a possibility. But if they did, then are they still Entish enough to be walking around on the North Moors at the beginning of the story?
That's a good point.
That's kind of where I am on that. Like, it would have to be either or. I don't think they're wandering around there freely. Some of them might have ended up in the old forest, but then they're not traipsing about.
They're not going to be walking around. I mean, Old Man Willow didn't go hunting for hobbits in the Shire. He stayed where he was. He stayed where he was because that's what he could do. He wasn't an Ent.
Yeah, he was just an angry tree at that point.
Right.
So that's what I tend to think about it. And I also there's so little information about the Entwives out there.
Yeah, there isn't much.
It's hard to know how much the Entwives are even like the Ents, The fact that Entwives are associated with agriculture so much, I often wonder if the Entwives might have been a little bit different from the Ents. Maybe they're not quite as
Maybe they were more like
as the
shrubs.
Maybe so.
They were like with a little path down the middle.
Nicely done. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but they're always associated with agriculture, not with shepherding trees. So it's entirely possible that the Entwives were a little bit different from Ents. Although I know when we talked about the possibilities of Ent reproduction, we kind of assumed that they were probably more tree-ish. But
they're still tree-ish. I mean, I think the description of Fimbrethil that we're given in the text
that's true. So they are
does
tree-ish,
suggest that they're tree-ish. They're certainly not shrubs like I joked about.
Yeah,
but they certainly had a very different mindset. The Ents that we meet are concerned with shepherding the trees in forests, but the Entwives were more concerned with settling down in gardens and having this sort of domesticated approach to trees.
That's very interesting. Yeah,
it is different, and I wonder if that might be the reason why none of them could survive this scorched earth policy. They weren't always walking around. They weren't always moving around. Shepherds always move around. They're moving their flock of sheep from one pasture to another. Gardeners, when they settle down in their garden, is where they
agriculture,
are. They stay.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, agriculture is a mark of a settled civilization. You can't be nomadic if you have agriculture.
No, and that makes me think that they just couldn't, that they weren't able to get out of the way as quickly as Ents might have been able to, because Ents are more mobile in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know.
That makes absolute sense. I think that's a really great argument.
Well, thank you. I'm like Tolkien. I hope some survived. I really do. But my hunch is in agreement with Tolkien that they just didn't. And as much as I love the idea, like you said, of that the giants that the hobbits had reported seeing were actually Ents, or Entwives, I should say, you're right on that. if they're Treeish and Huornish, they're not wandering around. It's unfortunate because it would be a nice conclusion, wouldn't it?
It would. I mean, I would love to think that Ents will be reunited with Entwives someday. That would be very nice. It would be a very
in
nice
Middle
happy
Earth
ending
as opposed
to
to in the Undying Lands or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think they are. I think all signs point to the Entwives are gone and they'll never be reunited. And I think that's just one of those signs of a world in decline.
Yeah, the fallen world, and the fact that, like Legolas said recently, that is everybody's fate, to love and to lose, to find and to lose. And that's just the way this world is. Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Well, I think we have time for one more. What say you?
Yeah, I think so. So,
all right.
Leon P. in the Netherlands wrote to us to ask about Moria. Leon said, in the Council of Elrond, Glóin refers to Moria as Wonder of the Northern World. Do you have any background for this epithet? In the Third Age, we know of dwarves living in the Blue Mountains, the Lonely Mountain, and the Iron Hills.
Right.
Durin the Deathless awoke at Mount Gundabad. But all these are more northerly than Moria.
That's true. But calling Moria the Wonder of the Northern World makes more sense if we think of Middle-earth as a whole.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the answer to Leon's question is, remember, what we think of as Middle-earth, based on the map, which I know all I have to do is say Middle-earth map and everybody can picture it in your mind.
Right, exactly. You see it right
That's
there.
actually the northwest corner of the landmass that is Middle-earth.
Right.
Now, we can probably come to grips with this idea just by thinking of the map, which if you just if you think of it in your mind, you know it continues off beyond the edge of the page to the east and to the south.
Right.
Only in the north and west, well, actually only in the west is it bounded by the sea. Tolkien himself said this a few times as well, that the area we see is just the northwest corner. In letter number 294 to Charlotte and Dennis Plimmer, these were the two journalists who interviewed Tolkien for the Daily Telegraph. Yeah, and they sent him a draft of the article.
I know this letter because he
responded
goes
with
through a
some
lot of
comments.
individual things in this letter because he's kind of pointing out he's fixing all the mistakes they made.
Yeah.
And another thing.
And in his words, some inaccuracies and misunderstandings he had to correct. And one of his comments was, Middle-earth is an old word, not invented by me, as reference to a dictionary such as the shorter Oxford will show.
In other words, look it up. That is not a compliment.
You don't have to look it up in the big OED either. You can look it up
That's
in the
right.
short
You don't
one.
have to have the big one. Just look it up in anything and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Man, that's a slam right there, journalists.
It meant the habitable lands of our world, set amid the surrounding ocean.
Right.
The action of the story takes place in the northwest of Middle-earth, equivalent in latitude to the coastlands of Europe and the north shores of the Mediterranean.
That's right. And he also points it out in several places in our favorite letter, number 131 to Milton Waldman. It wouldn't be an episode of the PPP without it.
Nope.
He says the events in the mythology, including the Silmarillion, take place in the Northwest. As the Second Age draws on, we have a great kingdom and evil theocracy, for Sauron is also the god of his slaves, growing up in Middle-earth. In the West, actually the Northwest is the only part clearly envisaged in these tales, lie the precarious refuges of the elves, while men in those parts remain more or less uncorrupted, if ignorant. Thanks, Professor. He makes similar statements in other letters as well, including 144, which we read from earlier. I believe that was the one to Naomi Mitchison, as well as 211.
That's right. So, again, what we think of as the entire map of Middle-earth is the Northwest.
Right.
So, here's the answer to the question. While Mount Gundabad and the Iron Hills and all those other dwarvish settlements to the north are, yes, they're all more northerly than Moria, but all of them, everything we see on the map is still in the northern world in the sense that they're in the part of the northern and northwestern part of Middle-earth. That has to be what Glóin means. When he says wonder of the northern world, he's talking about all the lands that we see on the map because it is all part of the north of Middle-earth.
That's right. Yeah. He's not saying it's the wonder of the northern part of the northwestern part of Middle-earth. It's the northern part of the world as a whole. So, yeah.
It's a matter of perspective, I think. We see we just see the map of Middle-earth that we know, and we're thinking,
we're zoomed into a quarter of it, and we need to zoom out and see all of it, even though not all of it's been drawn in.
Exactly.
Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when Sam does math.
I can't wait for that.
That's
Folks know we've been working towards that one for a long time. And I bet he's still probably better at math than we are after a recording.
Oh,
'Cause, man,
that's
I
not a
can't.
very high bar, Sean.
No,
That's
it really isn't. I can barely think sometimes when we're done.
yeah. Just fall into bed and go to sleep.
Yep.
Now, as always, folks, we want to thank each of you for listening, but we also want to give a very special thank you to our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier: James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, Ella in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy from North Carolina. Thank you all so very, very much.
Make sure you don't miss a single episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, and most of all, your harsh croaking screams to Parliament at theprancingponypodcast.com.
I'm going to let
Audio
you
files
open
for the
those.
win, right?
I'm
want
going to let you
MP3s.
open all those MP3s. I hope they're MP3s. I don't want our inbox filled with WAV files of harsh
Oh, no,
croaking
please don't
screams.
send uncompressed waves. That'd be terrible. Yeah.
Well, folks, Parliament's not always punctual with the mail, but I got to give him credit. He's getting a little better, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. And your question or comment may be featured on an upcoming show.
Indeed. Well, this has still been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
Farewell, friends.